The night before the insert, Rains shoved her against the wall of the Kavar grill, and I said nothing. That is the part I have carried longest. Not the mountain. Not the cold. Not what she did up there in 40 minutes of wind and incoming. That should have killed every one of us. The part that stays is the bar and my silence. And the way she steadied herself against the wall and looked at Rains the way you look at weather. Something you note? Adjust for and move through. We were 3 hours out from a morning insert into the Burial Ridge Line, eastern sector, elevation north of 9,000 feet. The op was a 6-man SEAL element plus 1 attachment, her. She had arrived at Fob Kessler with a single kit bag, a spotter scope, and no explanation from command beyond a 1-line addendum stapled to the mission brief. Specialist attachment, sniper qualified, fires as directed. No unit, no service history, no pedigree anyone could find. Rains, who had been running these mountains for 4 years and did not believe in attachments that showed up without a file, took one look at her across the bar and made his judgment out loud. They stapled a desk rider to a real op, he said, not quietly. She's never been above 5,000 feet with a weapon in her hands. Watch her freeze when it matters. She was sitting at the far end of the table, field stripping her suppressor. She did not look up. I watched her hands. She worked clean, no wasted motion, every component set on the cloth in the same order. Suppressor body, wipes, stack, end cap, mount. And she inspected each piece at the same angle under the bar light before she set it down. That registered somewhere I did not examine. But Rains was 8 years in, and I was 8 years in, and the morning was going to be brutal, and there are things you tell yourself about unit cohesion and stakes that let you say nothing when you should speak. He crossed the room and put his shoulder into hers as he passed. Hard. She caught the table edge. The suppressor did not move on the cloth, and she placed the last component in its spot and did not look up. I should have said something. I did not. We inserted it at 0430 into a darkness, so cold the air felt like metal against the back of the throat. The Burial Ridgeline is a series of false crests and loose shale that rises above a river valley, which turns into a kill box if anyone with a machine. Gun holds the high ground, 14 kilometers of exposed slope above the tree line, and the wind comes off the northern peaks in waves that push your muzzle and lie to your scope, and make the arithmetic of distance into a moving problem that never fully solves. Our job was to reach the northern saddle, plant a sensor package on the logistics route that had been active 3 nights a week, and be back on the valley floor before the light came. 6 hours in and out, clean. On the approach, she moved without a sound. I was behind her for 3 of the 14 kilometers, and I noticed, against my will, against what Rains had said the night before, that she read the terrain the way experienced people read terrain, looking at the ground 2 steps ahead, not at her feet, keeping her spacing, never once leaning into Garza's back when the shale shifted. She was not performing, she was just moving. Nothing went clean. The first contact came from the western face at 0610, just as the sky above the peaks turned that iron color that is not yet dawn. A PKM opened up from a boulder cluster 400 meters above us, and in the first burst Rains went down hard, left thigh, through and through. But the femoral was leaking and he was losing fast. Garza got a tourniquet on it inside 30 seconds, but Rains was not moving under his own power, and his face had already gone the gray-white of serious blood loss. We had 2 men carrying him, 1 running comms, and that left exactly 1 person to deal with the machine gun position, the 2 flanking elements working down the eastern slope toward our line, and the egress corridor below us that was the only way off this mountain. That person was her. I did not ask. She was already up and moving to a notch in the rock shelf 20 feet above our position, her rifle out, her spotter's scope up. She set the bipod on the notch lip, settled her body behind the stock, and I heard her voice for the first time under fire. Not a shout, not a call for instructions, just 4 words to herself, barely audible above the wind. Okay, start from here. The PKM went quiet 40 seconds later, 1 round. I did not understand the shot at the time. We were at 9,200 feet, the target was at roughly 9,600, and the wind off the eastern ridge was cutting lateral at 15 to 20 knots and gusting hard. You do not solve that problem in 40 seconds by luck. You solve it because you have spent years running the numbers until the numbers stop being numbers and become something closer to instinct. And the instinct is earned, not given. You solve it because you have lain in hides at altitude in conditions exactly like this and made the same shot in training until your hands know adjustment before your mind finishes asking. I did not know that about her yet. I was still working the radio, watching Rains bleed, and trying to get a QRF vector established on a frequency that kept breaking up in the peaks. She kept working. The flanking element on the eastern slope sent two fighters moving toward a rock shelf that would have given them a direct angle into our egress line, a position that would have pinned us on that switchback with no cover. She acquired the shelf, adjusted, and fired twice. The movement stopped. The second flanking element, further east and higher, tried a different approach across an open shale face. She ranged it, held, and the second man was 20 meters short of the tree line when she found him. For 39 minutes, while Garza kept Rains alive, and the four of us moved him down the switchback toward the valley floor, she held the high ground above us. She ranged, adjusted, fired. She did not rush a shot. She did not burn her magazine hunting contacts she had not confirmed. Every time I got a moment to look up the slope, she was in the same position, flat behind the rifle, the bipod steady on the rock, the suppressor tracking. At one point, a burst kicked shale 6 inches from her right elbow, and she shifted left along the shelf, rearranged from the new position, and continued without a pause that I could see from below. She came down last, moving fast and low through the loose rock, and when she reached us, she checked Rains's tourniquet without being asked, tightened it a half turn, and said nothing. The medevac crew was already setting down on the flat ground by the river. 2 flight medics and a crew chief, a barrel-chested master sergeant named Pell, who had been running casualty evacuation in this sector for 3 years. He jumped from the bird and came to Rains, and I was giving him the brief. Through and through left thigh, tourniquet at 30 minutes, BP dropping. We need him south now, and I saw the moment Pell stopped listening to me. He was looking at her. She had her back partly turned, running a function check on the rifle the way you do after working it hard and cold and grit. Methodical, each part pressed and confirmed, the way her hands had moved on that suppressor in the bar the night before. Like she was closing a conversation. Pell said, "What's your call sign?" She said it without turning around. "Dusk rail." Pell went still. Not the stillness of recognition exactly, something older than that and quieter, the kind that comes when a name reaches a man who thought he understood the full shape of a story and finds out there was a room he never saw. He looked at one of the flight medics, and the medic had already stopped working for a moment, the IV line hanging from his hand. The other one looked up from the stretcher. "Harrow Pass," Pell said. 2 years ago, Northern Face. That was you." She kept running the function check. "Load your patient, Master Sergeant." Pell loaded his patient. But before he stepped back to the bird, he turned to me. Not to say anything, just to look, the way men look at each other when they both understand that something occurred in this valley that neither of them will fully account for later. A single nod. Then he was back on the bird and the rotors were up, and the medevac was gone south toward the surgical unit. I looked at her. She had her kit secured and her rifle slung, and she was reading the ridgeline one more time with the spotter's scope, methodically, without drama, like a woman finishing a job she had decided, long before any of us doubted her, was hers to complete. Rains was conscious by the time they reached the station. He spent 3 days there, then surgery in the south, then 3 months of recovery. I heard 6 weeks later that he had written her a letter. I never knew what it said. She did not reply, or if she did, he never mentioned it. I found a spent casing on the rock shelf after the medevac lifted when I climbed back up the slope to clear her firing position. Brass 762. One of the rounds she had put through the machine gun position in the first 40 seconds of the fight. I put it in my chest pocket. I have it now, 7 years on, in the front pouch of a range bag on a shelf in my garage. I do not call it a souvenir. I call it the evidence of the night a man shoved a woman against a wall. And I said nothing. And then that woman climbed a mountain in the dark and held a pass alone for 39 minutes and never once asked anyone to notice. Not Pell. Not me. Not Rains. She did the work, tightened the tourniquet, and came down the slope. I have been trying to figure out how to be that kind of steady for 7 years. I am not there yet, but I keep the brass, and I think about the notch in the rock, and the rifle tracking in the wind, and the 4 words I heard her say before the first shot, not a prayer, not a declaration, just a woman telling us where she was and choosing, from that exact place, to begin.